Quick note on Saturday, I was a guest of Cactus Pete's and really enjoy that place. I'm not what you'd call a casino gambler. I don't have anything against it though. It's not one of those things I do a lot of. But of course, they do a lot more than that at Cactus Pete's. They concerts and various shows and good food. And in fact, I got to eat a great big dinner. And then I had an opportunity to stretch out in the spacious room. And then that evening went to a concert. Those of you who probably were listening closely to the radio last week knew that one of the most legendary heavy metal bands, although they were considered heavy metal in the 1970s, it seemed kind of tame now in comparison with what came following that. Blue Oyster Cult played there. They did two shows. And I went to the second show on Saturday night and just had a wonderful, wonderful time. I had a really nice chat. There was a couple who were sitting at the table with me, and they the husband at one point, the band didn't want to make, because some people went to both shows. So the band wanted to make sure that the two shows were different. So they changed out quite a few songs between the shows. And while they were on stage, they mentioned this, and the fellow there at the table with me yelled out, Harvest Moon. So they said, okay, let's play Harvest Moon. They took a suggestion and they did it. But I had to chuckle because at one point he leaned over while we were talking and he said, I hope they don't play Godzilla. And within 5 minutes they did. And then he just shook his head side to side. But it was a wonderful time, and it's a great comfortable venue to be at when you go to see a show or have the dinner and all of that. And for me, it was nice getting away for a few hours and then returning. I got up early because I wanted to be back so I could go to church at 8:30 on Sunday morning, and I was able still to do that. But here we are in the middle of what you think sometimes nowhere, and yet not far away, within 40, 45 minutes for a great many of us, is an opportunity to have world-class entertainment. It's 9:46. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 34 right now. Look, we don't want to just sit here and I want to make a point that as much as the troubles are in the Republican Party and the media amplification that we're getting on all of this, do you realize Bernie Sanders has defeated Hillary Clinton in 5 of the last 6 contests where they faced off against each other? Now, her big prize was Arizona last Tuesday. But that very same day, Sanders took Utah and he took Idaho. And then over the weekend, he took Washington State, a lot of delegates there, Alaska, and Hawaii. So if she is such a lock and the American people are going to rush out in November to make sure she's our next president, she just lost 5 of 6 contests to a 74-year-old socialist who appears not to own a comb. Tell me how that happens. Coming up on 9:47, and she could still be indicted. According to the Drudge Report yesterday, the FBI is looking to interview her about some of the troubles she may have had with her own server. That means that the Chinese and the Russians and the like could have been looking at the classified emails she was sending back and forth while she served as Secretary of State. Also, it broke over the weekend that Ashton Carter, sometimes known as Ash Clown, that he had been doing the same thing. The defense secretary. How steep is the learning curve among American liberals? She's already potentially on her way she could go to prison for crying out loud. She won't, but she could. Technically, she could go to prison. And then here's this dingling at the Defense Department. Same guy, by the way, who said women should be in combat. Because, we want to make sure that the military, instead of being out there to protect us from evil and smash the bad guys, that it's just that we have good workplace etiquette and that, women have the same opportunities as men. This comes from the National Review. Kevin D. Williamson, also, by the way, not a Trump guy. Consequences are for schmucks. He says, we cannot get Hillary Rodham Clinton in handcuffs, but we can get James Myers in handcuffs. Mrs. Clinton, who may very well be the next president, has been on a decades-long crime spree. And then he goes into a breakdown here of all of the terrible things she has done over the years. People like Hillary Rodham Clinton, he writes, do not go to jail without first becoming governor of Illinois or mayor of Detroit. And herself always has her sights set on a higher office than those. James Myers, on the other hand, is a schmuck. He says, the first 3 times I saw his story, I rolled my eyes and went on my way, assuming that it was one of those Facebook fictions that make the rounds. Denounced me as an inside the Beltway elitist, but I changed my mind when I saw it in the Washington Post. So who is James Myers? James Myers is a Florida man. Way back in the era when we still had VHS tapes, he rented a tape of a really bad movie, Freddy Got Fingered, rented the tape, and then apparently forgot to return it. The people that he actually video rental stores went the way of the dinosaur a long time ago. The store filed a complaint against him back in 2000 or 2001. The store since has closed. It closed several years ago. Just went out of business because, well, in the day of Netflix, who goes and rents videos, right? It doesn't happen anymore. He was taking his daughter to school a couple of weeks ago when he got pulled over because apparently he had a burned-out taillight. The police officer checked his background and discovered there was a warrant out for his arrest because he had not returned a VHS tape in 15 or 16 years. Probably didn't even know it was still around his house. He allowed him to finish taking the daughter to school on condition that this guy would turn himself in. He did that. He turned himself into police, where they then handcuffed him and they printed him and charged him for theft, even though the store is still no longer there. He's going to have to pay a $200 fine. It's a huge embarrassment, and after the $200 fine, it will all go away. But meanwhile, if you're Hillary Rodham Clinton, 4 guys can get killed over in Benghazi because you called off a rescue attempt. You can trade in cattle futures and make $100,000 in one day. White House aides mysteriously end up dead in Fort Marcy Park. Again, you can have your own private server stuck in a bathroom somewhere, so you can traffic in emails so that there's no record of your emails that could get you in trouble later on when you're Secretary of State. All of this is okay. But this guy in Florida didn't return a videotape of a grade B movie, or a grade D movie for that matter. And 15 years later, he's handcuffed and he's got to pay a fine. Which one of these is a greater threat to society, and which one of these is a greater series of crimes? 9:51, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com, 736-0300. You're up next, and you're on air.
Yeah, Hillary's a criminal, but isn't George Bush can't leave the country? Like, he's got a warrant to go to the Geneva Convention on crimes against humanity. Yeah, that's right.
Which crimes did George?
Let's put the
what so-called warrant? George Bush travels to Africa all the time to help out.
He's indicted in Spain. He cannot even get out of this country. Notice how
which
he's
crimes?
In Texas, can't get out.
Which crimes did he do? Which crimes is he responsible for?
They want him in The Hague. That's where they want him. They want him. They want him.
What did he do?
Because
what did
he
do?
Murdered people.
Which people? Hello? You mean like bad guys who are flying airplanes into buildings in this country? And so he murdered people? He murdered people who were out there already murdering other innocent people? Is that it? Is that what you're telling me? So that makes him a bad dude, where Hillary Clinton called the planes back and the choppers back and 4 Americans died in Libya? I'm sorry, but there's no moral equivalence here. George Bush was keeping the country safe, and they were killing bad guys, really bad dudes. And that's how that worked. The current president of the United States, for our English-challenged friend there, the current president of the United States uses drones to kill American citizens in foreign countries without due process of law. But that's okay. Funny thing is, it's like this guy thinks that, well, if George Bush waterboarded someone, then that excuses Hillary Clinton's bad behavior. 2 wrongs don't make a right. But if you're in denial and, you keep getting your welfare checked, then hey, who cares, right? And if you're a Democrat, that's all it's about. It's about being on easy street. Hillary Clinton will take from someone else and give to you. And then you don't have to worry about work or effort or anything else. You can sit around all day and call the radio station and say, yeah, but Bush, it's all Bush's fault. And I can't find a job because I'm incompetent, but Hillary gives me money. All right, welcome to the future, folks. 9:54. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and News Radio George Bush has just recently traveled to Africa and no one arrested him. Why did he travel to Africa? Because he helps out with a charity that provides for poor people in Africa in desperate need, who are out there digging for gourds just to find something to eat. Yeah, that's what he did post-presidency. He didn't go around the world giving million-dollar speeches and creating a Clinton Foundation so that foreigners could funnel money into the Clinton campaign. No, George W. Bush didn't do any of that. Funny how that works. Now, there were some people who had simulated drowning. These were bad dudes who were planning terrorist attacks against innocent people around the world. And, of course, the namby-pambies in Europe say that's wrong. That's why, of course, their airports are getting blown up and their subway systems are getting blown up. And 130 people are dead in Paris and 30-some-odd more in Belgium and terribly maimed. It's because, of course, they say it's mean to treat terrorists that way. Well, you know what? I have a vision that we're going to have a president someday who, if need be, will go in there and boil 100 million of those people into the atmosphere. If that's what's needed to save civilization, then so be it. You can reach the program by dialing 736-0300, 736-0300. Pardon me for thinking that we should stand up and defend the people of the United States and innocents everywhere. My email address, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Speaking of the candidates running for political office, this is a fellow by the name of Carl Cannon, legendary reporter, writing today. This is in effect, if you go to, I highly recommend it, Real Clear Politics, Donald Trump's Useful Idiots. This shows you that liberal mindset and what it really does. Jim Kenney was sworn in as mayor of Philadelphia on January 4. By January 7, he was vigorously, if inadvertently, assisting Donald Trump's presidential bid. That day, a 30-year-old Muslim convert in a flowing white robe who had previously traveled to Saudi Arabia and Egypt, he should have been arrested and taken to The Hague, right? Fired 13 shots at a Philadelphia cop, wounding him severely before the officer fired back and the suspect was arrested. When questioned by detectives, this Muslim convert said he'd done it for ISIS. Quote, he stated that he pledges his allegiance to the Islamic State, he follows Allah, and that is the reason he was called upon to do this, unquote, related Police Captain James Clark. Quote, he wouldn't give us anything more than that, unquote. To Mayor Kenney, a Democrat, this shocking crime, which was caught on camera, demonstrated the need for stricter gun control laws. This was soon revealed not to be the moral of the story. The gun used by the would-be jihadist had been stolen in a 2013 burglary of a Philadelphia police officer's home. Undeterred, Kenney doubled down on his talking points. In other words, if we were only nicer to these poor black men who convert and then shoot police officers, and it's the terrible rhetoric. You know why people like Donald Trump are doing well? Because they'd smoke a guy like that. That's why. Liberals out there who think that we are somehow making things worse by criticizing the jihad boys don't seem to realize whether you criticize them or not, they're going to go about their business, which is the maiming and killing of innocents or police officers on duty. And they have to be stopped. You know how you stop a bad guy with a gun? You blow his brains out. Michael Medved, who hosts a radio talk show in Seattle, has been a longtime film critic as well, was asked during the height of the Iraqi war about 10 years ago by some leftist whack job why he supported the war effort. And he said, well, we want to bring the bad guys to justice or eliminate them. And the lefty said, oh, but violence never solved anything. To which Medved replied, it certainly solved Adolf Hitler. Case closed. Rush Limbaugh coming up next in just a few minutes, following the news from Fox at 10 o'clock. Sean Hannity following Fox News at 1 o'clock this morning. Glenn Beck, or 1 o'clock this afternoon, excuse me, wrong part of the day. That's George Noory and Anunnaki time. Glenn Beck following the news at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Dave Ramsey tonight. Bill Colley wishing you a happy day and a great day on this Easter Monday, on the 100th anniversary of the Great Easter Rising in Ireland. Just wanted to make sure I got that in there, which led, of course, to Irish independence. I just thought I'd mention that. God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me back here tomorrow between 8 and 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We'll get the times and date right.